Today, we're joined by Adriana Maya, adult film star, creative performer, and former Christian camp counselor, who's turned a one secret double life into one of the most honest conversations about sex worth, faith, and personal freedom. From working at a Christian camp as a teenager to becoming one of the most recognizable faces in modern porn, Adriana's story forces us to ask hard questions about consent, morality, and how society judges women who choose a highly sexualized life. In this interview, we're going to talk about how she went from that world to this one, what promiscuity really means to her, whether she sees family and kids in her future, and how she protects herself in an industry where the line between empowerment and exploitation can get dangerously thin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Of course, I haven't spoke to you for a decade, which is crazy. Like I interviewed you. It was like one of the early adult film interviews that I did. It was over the phone, and I was like, really excited. You really put me on game and like, help me like, be like a more professional, like, in my other interviews, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. You're so sweet. It's funny, you were actually one of my first interviews too. So I think you helped me like learn how to talk and really just kind of divulge because I notice in a lot of interviews everyone's trying to be very careful about what they
Right.
say. I like to go for more of an organic approach and just let it all out.
You've you spent years as a counselor at a Christian camp. How did your
Yes.
faith community react when you entered the adult industry? And did you ever feel like you had to split your identity between Christian teenager and porn star?
Not necessarily. While I was working at the camp, I was actually still in high school at the time. So it was kind of like during summer, I'd be surrounded by like all my camp friends and stuff. And then after that, I would go into like school mode. So really getting into porn, it kind of just felt like I was in more of like school mode. There's still obviously people around me who like have faith, who talk about it, but it's not as prevalent. Of course, everyone's way more focused on porn and sex. Um, but yeah, it was just it's not really that hard for me because I was so used to it doing it at high school. And now that I'm doing it in porn, it kind of just feels like a more, like more advanced form of that, like trying to keep it balanced. I do notice though, as I've gotten older in the industry, there are a lot more performers who are more vocal about like their faith and things like that. So that is quite interesting to me.
As someone who once worked in a moral religious environment, how do you reconcile that background with the more explicit commercial side of porn today?
I think I had an easier time actually doing it when I was younger. As I've gotten older, there are certain things that kind of like stick with me or like ring in my head. I like feel a little like discernment moment coming. So that's gotten a little difficult as I've gotten older with things like age play in regards to porn. That's a huge thing, whether it be pairing a young girl with an older guy, dressing a young girl up or down so she looks younger. Those are things that I might have ignored or let just kind of pass me by when I first got in. And now that I've gotten older, those are things that kind of set off little alarm bells for me. So I actually notice I tend to avoid them or work around them, things like that. But for sure, when I was younger, it was kind of just like, oh, okay, this is how the business is. And now that I've had over a decade and I'm like, no, I can give a little pushback on some of those moments. So yeah, it was easier when I first got in. Now it's a bit more difficult, I would say, navigating.
Have you ever worried that your past in Christian counseling would make it harder for people to take your current views on morality, consent, or sex work seriously?
I did, but because of my faith and how I was raised and taught about God or a higher power, I believe your relationship is very personal with Him. And, in Corinthians, it talks about how God judges those inside of the church most more harshly than those outside of the church. It's not those inside of the church's job to regulate or be the voice of reason, if you will, as people have taken up that sort of position a lot of times. But really, God specifically says it's not our jobs. He's the one left to judge.
Sure.
So that's how I've really moved in my career. My relationship with God or the higher power, it's still prevalent for me. It just might look different than other people's. So
Nah,
I
I
was
get
for
that.
a bit, but it's okay now.
The media often labels sexually open women as promiscuous. How do you define your own sexuality and how do you push back against that label when people use it about you?
um, there's no labels for men. You don't call them promiscuous. You say he's the man, he's cool, he's the ladies man. There's literally a movie called The Ladies Man, and it is a funny movie, but it is really gross if you're actually like watching it. So I think that sort of helped me as I've gotten older. I've noticed that there's that double side where it's definitely not the same for men, and I especially notice it with like male performers. So they everyone will call us whores or all the names in the book, but a male performer might be working 4 or 5 times as much as I am, and
Right.
they're cool, people idolize them and stuff. So I think it used to bother me, or like that little thought was in the back of my head that people had something to say, there's an underlying like beef or issue with me being a whore. But yeah, I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm just like, it is what it is. I feel like more people that are talking about things like this just don't have a lot going on in their lives. And like, I feel like we've gone over the whore topic so much, like, I feel like it's a little dead. But it's the double edged thing. They don't think guys are whores. So I stopped feeling bad about it. I was like, if I was a man, people would praise me for it.
Right, yeah. It's interesting, like on the internet, some of the comments that you hear, like it's almost like we're in the 19th century or something. Like, like people's like minds haven't progressed to be like more open-minded.
Yeah.
You've talked about loving anal and pushing your limits on set. Where do you
Yeah.
personally draw the line between exploring kinks and situations that feel degrading or unsafe?
Right. So luckily in most of my scenes nowadays, especially, they go through a yes and no list. So you can write down like specific things that you like and dislike. And luckily I haven't had any issues with any of the guys because things are like more formal and more talked about. But I would say when I first got in, it was a little rough because you're writing that line of you want to be a fun person to work with and
Right.
you want to and you want it to look wild, but you honestly want it to be very controlled. You don't want the other performer to be able to kind of run off and do whatever they want. So I would say it's a little harder for new girls, maybe even girls who don't have that self-confidence and stuff, aren't that sure of themselves. Nowadays, I think with like things like OnlyFans and things like that, it's really given the female performer more power and more of the willingness to speak up for themselves. So you kind of avoid situations like that now, but I think it must be. It's not hard for me, but it must be harder for newer girls or newer creators to like draw that line because when you go on set, they say we want you to do a wild all anal oil scene, right? And that's your outline. There's no yeses and nos unless you give them.
For sure.
So if you're so worried about being so fun, you might negate the fact that, oh yeah, I don't want a fist in my ass.
Yeah,
So it it's a good thing to be very aware of yourself, but also you have to like really draw the line. So I think for all performers, maybe if you have like a little list you write down, that way if like someone's really hot or something, you don't get too excited about
for
fucking
sure.
them. Like you're like, oh yeah, this is business first. Um, but no, lately it's not that hard to define the line between going too far, being pushed too far, because they have those checklists now to kind of ensure the safety of performers and to ensure that like companies are on the up and up, if you will.
How do you respond to people who say your lifestyle normalizes hypersexuality or promotes promiscuity, especially the younger audience who might look up to you?
So I would say absolutely, I can understand where you're coming from. As someone who got in at 18, that alone, the number could send the wrong message. However, most performers, and if not, I don't think at this age that anyone under 21 should be in the industry. I don't, you can't buy alcohol, you can't, do certain things. I don't understand why you can do porn. That's something that I've been really wrapping my head around since I got in at 18. And obviously, I'm very thankful for my career, but I do think you need that time to develop and stuff. So I do wish that there were more girls who were more vocal instead of trying to paint this perfect picture of the industry. I wish more girls and men in general, or performers in general, were just honest about how hard it is getting in young and not knowing yourself. And really, you're kind of shaping yourself as a person in the industry. That can be very scary, especially if you're very formidable. So I do say it does. I do believe it does cater to a younger audience and welcoming them in. I wish that more, especially the older performers who did get in at those younger ages, were more vocal about the risks and, just warnings and things that you should take heed of in the industry, in any industry. But because this is a sex based industry, it's unfortunate, but young girls is sort of what the viewers want, the main viewership wants. So I prefer if people would lean into sort of dressing older performers down instead of welcoming in like the fresh 18s. But that's not happening. So hopefully, I hope the girls, the young girls, young boys are following the resources, really looking to like older performers who are advocating for them, because it is very risky and very scary for young people. And I honestly agree that we do cater and sort of reach out to the younger audience for sure.
You've been open about enjoying sexual freedom, but have you
Yeah.
ever wrestled with wanting traditional family life, marriage, kids, stability while staying in an industry that's often transient and high risk emotionally?
Yes, absolutely. Being obviously in porn, you ride this weird line of constantly sleeping with or even interacting sexually with other people and then going home afterwards. And unless you have a partner or someone, who's very comfortable with that, knows the business, or at least just knows how it works, it's very, very hard to navigate that. Um, I found you have to kind of find people who were in obscure jobs, things where they kind of work for themselves. Yeah, they have to have a lot of freedom because we have so much freedom. So it is a tough line to ride. And there's a lot of memes that go around about like us, the porn star women, coming home and be like, "Oh, honey, I had a great day at work," and it's like, "What'd you do today?" And, "Oh, I had a gangbang," and that's it kind of is what it is. I've known situations where girls, can't talk about their work, like a don't ask, don't tell policy. I know situations where they want to talk a little too much about work and it kind of gets them off. And if that's what you're into, that's great. But I do think it is a hard situation to be in, and to find a partner that isn't fetishizing you and is kind of just appreciating it as like a real relationship. It is hard, but I have been lucky enough to find love in this career. I've been with someone for 7 years. So it's
Nice.
very lucky on my end,
Yeah,
but
congratulations. Yeah,
he works for himself. He doesn't work for someone, so he also has the freedom to kind of move around. So I think that's one of the reasons it works for us. It's a little hard when one person can call out of work and do whatever they want, and all I do is masturbate and come all day around the house. He's running numbers. Like, one of us definitely has it easier, but you have to find a partner that will accept, for sure, the little quirks and kinks, if you will, of our career.
for sure. If you wanted to raise children, how
Yeah.
would you protect them from stigma or from the way your work gets portrayed online?
Um, well, I believe in one being very open. I don't really know what it is. I would respect with ages. I think certain conversations can be had as they would get older. I would obviously add more to the conversations, but I think just being open about sexuality, um, I think having sex talks, the talk, at whatever age, you feel like that's needed. I feel like having that and incorporating, I don't believe the sex talk is just don't have sex, use condoms. I believe it's talking about pleasure, consent, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
So probably around there, I would throw in, hey, like, some people actually do that for work sometimes, depending on the maturity and like things of that of my child. But yeah, I believe I would keep them in the loop at age appropriate times. I would also not necessarily hide it as a shameful thing. It would be more of, you're not age appropriate to know about this. It's an adult thing. Whereas I know a lot of people, it's hard hiding it. They have no idea about it, and it's like, I think my kids would have an idea, and I'll just, once they're of age, I'll be like, yes, mommy did porn. Like, but yeah, I don't think it'll be hard. I think it's more about being open, and I think it helps hide the and helps rid of the shame and the stigma of the industry, depending on like how you present it.
Long term, do you see yourself staying in front of the camera, moving into directing, production, or exiting the industry entirely? And what would it take for you to walk away?
So I believe I will be behind the camera. That's sort of my goal. I see a lot of avenues and niches in the industry that aren't necessarily catered to. So I'm like very interested in delving into those. To leave completely, really, it would just be more of a family aspect, me and my partner kind of deciding that. I don't knock on the women who do like pregnancy content or anything like that, because if that's your means of income, that's your business. But I personally won't be doing anything like that. So it would probably be around having kids, being pregnant at that time. I would bow out for a bit, if not indefinitely. But it wouldn't be one of those things where I just kind of disappear. I would sort of trickle out, if you will.
In an industry where power dynamics are intense, have you ever walked off set or refused a scene because it crossed your line? And how did you communicate that without career consequences?
Yeah, so I'm a very emotional person, and I have a hard time dealing with people who I feel like have a bad attitude on set, because it's such a sensitive, intimate moment. So there have been twice that I can like recall. I'm sure it's more. I'm a crier. Um, there have been twice where once the director was a little snappy, and like he's known for being an asshole, but he was just a little snappy with me. Both times I was actually a director. Once was at a photo shoot, once was at a boy girl scene. And both times I believe I like kind of just stormed off into the bathroom, cried, like freaked out, called my agent. My agent called the director, talked to him, and then like they apologized to you, and like it's fine. I believe I ended up finishing both times on set after like my agent communicated with them. But had I not had my agent, I'm pretty sure I would have just left the set. It's nice to have the agents because they give you that little pillow sort of to dealing with people. Um, but it's also like I shouldn't have to have my agent, regulate things. You should just be a decent person, especially if I'm naked. Like, so yeah, I would say those times. And yeah, I definitely almost left set.
No, I feel that. I feel like even like in traditional acting, I could see like why I've seen like people like leave like sets and then like where the director sometimes like people just be on a power trip or like you can't talk to people like that or treat people that way or like
And
what
it's like, angry, but everyone else was in a good mood till you did that.
for sure. How do you distinguish between pushing limits for performance and situations that start to feel like coercion or sexual assault, given how nuanced consent can be on set?
True. I think one, actually knowing if you're like genuinely attracted to your partner. So I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of the same people over and over.
Mm,
So generally in like scenes with someone, there's a guy, Tony Rubino. Him and I have worked together,
mm.
I would say maybe over 20 times, like probably way more, honestly. But he's a person I would try things on set with. There's there's like a certain level of comfortability. I think you just know after you've been in the business for a while, or maybe even girls who are new, they're just very sure of themselves. You kind of know when you click with someone. And so for me, if I have a moment like that and I know we're clicking and there's good chemistry and they're reading my signals, I don't have to like basically write it out for them. They're just catching on. Those are people that I'm more willing to sort of push the boundaries and see like where it goes. Um, I will say it used to be a little more free, but because we do have those consent checklists, they kind of want to ensure that like everything that you say you're going to do on camera or that you do on camera has been checked off. So it's kind of hard to go overboard sometimes because you've already consented to certain things. You have to sort of stay within those parameters. But sometimes you have those people that you just have that chemistry with. And so you kind of, you look in each other's eyes and you're like, and he's like, oh, you want to be choked. And it's like, yes, oh my gosh. So sometimes in those situations, you can sort of override the list, but it really does determine and depend on your partners, how your chemistry is, if you guys are like nonverbal communication is good, things like that. So for me, it's not very hard because I get lucky. I get to work with people that I've worked with a lot, but some people just naturally have that too, that
Right.
they can read people very well. So those situations, the best to shoot with because you just feel super comfortable. You feel very safe with them.
That's really great. Like I think like communication just like is really important just in general in life. I was wondering like if another performer or crew member ever crossed boundaries, what would your ideal reporting or support system look like? I know you mentioned agents earlier, uh,
Right.
but but like I'm talking like both within the industry and outside it.
Gotcha. Okay. So if I was on set, they usually have more than one person besides the director. Nowadays, there's a sort of talent liaison, if you will, who's kind of like there for us for everything. They're like our assistant, but also for those situations, they're the
Mhm.
person you would run to and just kind of divulge to them. If I'm not on set, I'm in tons of girls group chats. It's all female performer group chats where we kind of just drop like info, things that happen, stuff. It can get a little messy. And I will say it's one of those situations you have to use discernment with what people are saying. But that's a way to like, just keep other people safe and like, hey, I was in a weird situation with this person. If someone else has a similar story, take heed. That sort of thing for the group chats. Also, this is a little unconventional, but depending on like the degree of it, a lot of people have taken to social media to sort of resolve things and uh, like a kangaroo court, I guess. Like it's kind of crazy, but that's what happens.
I see
So
that quite regularly.
yeah, so I'm like, there's a couple avenues, but in general, something us veteran performers say is a lot of the people who take things online don't actually have the connections or like know who to go to outside of that. And that's very true. So while I do think it's a good thing to vocalize when things are at a certain level and to get them out there among the general public, a lot of the stuff that you see on Twitter and Instagram, the drama circles for the industry, that's all it is. It's really drama. So a lot of us vets like have a little joke that like they have to go online because they don't actually have the connections to know who to talk to divulge it to. So yeah, I would say we have a couple networks. Some people go straight for online. Some people only handle things within companies, directors, and things like that.
Yeah, I think like sometimes too, like mental health plays a part, it seems like where people like, they need somewhere to vent and opposed to like necessarily going to like a trained professional. They think they treat Twitter or Instagram, and you see it all the time. And I think that's like across industries. There's a lot of people who share things that
Like I don't know if people know about diaries anymore.
yeah.
They're a lost art. Everyone needs to get one. Get the back, keep it in your house, and just put all your thoughts there. Especially in our industry, I think a lot of people forget you're selling an image. You're selling
Yeah.
sex, selling yourself. While some fans might be entertained, by the drama, it is very a lot of us are entertained by it. It's also not a good look because a lot of times then that's what people hold to your name. That's who you are to them.
True.
Oh, the girl who's always on Twitter arguing. Like I can't tell you how many girls that I've wanted to perform with, and then I only see them on Twitter being a little crazy, and I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Like, she sucks a mean dick, but she might be crazy. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotten a little rough over the past few years, I feel, with people getting online and kind of spilling the beans. And
Yeah. And then too, like it's a lot of like I think some people do that for engagement and clout chasing, just like because if you do those kind of videos, they seem to get more views and engagement than like you just come in on like doing sharing your day or your routine.
well, all of us talking about it too. Then all the fans want to know, well, who are they talking about?
Right.
So really, it stirs the pot very well, but it's also just a terrible look for the industry. I'm like, guys, we can't be arguing with each other every day. Like they want to see buttholes. Like this is not. It's like it's a little rough though because I remember when I first got in 2014. It feels like a lifetime ago,
Right.
schools were a little different for like being online and how you carried yourself. You kind of could do things like that, and it wasn't really a make or break. Now it could actually ruin your career and get you no listed by a lot of people.
You've seen the industry from the inside. What red flags would tell a young person to watch for if they're thinking about entering porn to avoid being exploited or trafficked?
So any person who says you need to do an audition, it's not real. They have literally sites developed for girls that unfortunately are usually not the most conventionally attractive, but that's literally their bread and butter. So when I say there's a niche for everything, there's a niche for everything, even ugly people. Um, so I would say avoid any directors, produce anyone who says you need to audition for stuff. I promise you don't. You can get thrown on an actual porn set as long as you're tested and your paperwork's done. Like you don't need to audition for shit. Um, a lot of these AI companies or companies in general are doing contracts that incorporate AI in the contract. So that's something to look out for. A lot of girls specifically get into the industry and they don't necessarily have a game plan for how long they want to be in it. And it ends up being less than 6 months.
Mhm.
If you are shooting so many of these big name scenes and you sign away your eight excuse me, and you sign away your AI rights, you get out in 6 months, you could be seeing yourself on these sites for the next who knows however many years because they just like your look and they took some pieces from it. Like, I think it's very risky. And I know AI is great for a lot of things, but I just do not see it having a place in the industry. So that's something that I think people really need to watch out for.
How worried are you that some girls come into porn thinking it's empowering or easy cash, but end up in situations that feel more like trafficking or manipulation than choice?
Um, it's honestly very scary. I personally know a girl who I actually stayed with at the cam house for a while. She was perfectly fine there. Nothing illegal was happening there. She ended up leaving the cam house and going to Vegas with another girl and ended up getting in a whole pimping, sex trafficking situation. And so stuff like that is really scary because a lot of times, when you meet people, you think everyone has the best interest for you when you're innocent and you're a little naive to it, it's not really in your head. But unfortunately, in any industry, young hot girls, especially like very sexual people, are exploited. So I think it's something that you just have to look out for when making friends in this industry, especially very quick and fast friendships that sort of get really close like very fast and are just moving very fast. I think that's something to sort of look out for. I know everyone wants, companionship and stuff, but I've heard a lot of scary stories from women specifically who think a new girl that they became friends with is like their other half,
Right.
and it's a setup situation or
Yeah.
a situation where she's kind of using you and you genuinely don't know. So it is very scary, and I think it's something to look out for. Just avoiding anyone who, even pimps. I know girls are lazy. Everyone wants a pimp. Don't get a pimp. You don't need a pimp. You really don't need a pimp. No one needs to teach you how to manage your money. Get a financial advisor. Like, pimps are not good for you. Don't do it. So yeah, a lot of
What
warnings.
what concrete changes, age verification, mandatory counseling, union style protections, do you think the industry needs to better protect performers from abuse and trafficking?
The age verification, I know a lot of people are, it's rough. We have to do more paperwork. We have to, but I am so happy that that has been implemented. I know that in certain states like Florida, where I'm in now, like a lot of the performers are based out here. So they're not very happy about it. Not because they want people that are underage, excuse me, to be doing these things, but because with these new age verification laws comes in with them moving forward with other laws, like laws about what content we can do, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So that's why a lot of people are against it. I think it's great. I hate that so many unverified performers were allowed to upload content for decades across these platforms without any sort of check as to who's an adult, who's anything like that. So I think it's good. I think it's also good for piracy. The only issue is, this new age verification thing, the Visa and MasterCard thing where they're cracking down on us. They're not cracking down on any of the other sites. They're just doing like a couple main big sites.
Right.
So if you go down one tier, any of the other porn sites are fine, or tube sites. So that's a little confusing to me because they're still extremely graphic, what should be illegal content on those. But I do think it's good. I think the age verification is something that we needed. Um, the only downside with that is AI is something they're incorporating with that. And so to do age verification, they're incorporating AI to do checks on everything. So it's like a double-edged sword. You want the extra layer of safety, but you don't want to boost AI, but we don't have a choice. We're not the developers.
No, I understand that. If one of your younger fans told you they wanted to be like you and start doing porn, what would you actually say to them step by step?
I would say one, wait till you're 21. I think you should be 21 to do it.
Mm.
If you are interested in really getting into it, I would say do camming, do your own content until you're 21, or start with that, preferably. It'll help you build your fan base. It'll help you get sort of the work ethic for working for yourself. It'll all be driven by you. I say you need to find a handful of creators. You like their style, you like how they present themselves, you're into them. I would sort of watch their social medias. I would check out how they label their content, what sort of content they're doing. When I first got in, I was taught to watch other girls on campsites, see how they were running their shows, so you can get a feel for it. And that really helped me. So that's something I would tell other girls to do, and invest maybe $100 and just, find some creators you like and like kind of study their content, if you will. There's plenty of free content if you're broke. So you're free to do that too, but pay for your porn if you can. I prefer it. But I do think you need to study and really look into it. There's a lot of success and safer work now. So I would say play into that as much as you can, give as little as you can. There's an argument in porn about giving all that you're comfortable with, or pacing it and sort of trickling it out as time goes on. And I think you pick which side you're going to go for that and just stick to it. um and yeah, but it's pretty easy nowadays, I think, to be successful in the industry. I think it's consistency and just people like genuinely wanting to do it. Honestly, everyone wants a quick buck, but when you like actually want to do it, you have a sort of passion for it, your fans can really tell.
I noticed you said you would advise them to start at 21 and you started at 18. And that makes me wonder, like looking back, what's one thing you wish the younger Christian camp counselor version of you could tell the adult film star version of you before you started?
I would tell myself probably to just focus on my career, because I was so young. And it could not even be an age thing. It could be a me thing. But I've noticed with a lot of young performers in the industry, you get in and you're so excited, you're making all this money, and then you have something in like the back of your head that's like telling you to be in a relationship, and you're like, oh, I want love, I want this, and like that's great, but I feel like you should kind of pick. Like, if you are young, I think you should be career focused. I don't think really anyone should be
Yeah,
focused on love that young.
for sure.
But specifically in the industry, I think it happens where you start making a good amount of money and you're traveling a lot and you're around all these people, but you want a genuine connection. So a lot of us end up looking for relationships that end up squandering your career. You sort of accept things or accept someone who doesn't necessarily support your career. Sometimes it's a fetish situation where they're super into it at first and then it becomes jealousy because you're having sex with other people. So I think that I would just tell younger me to like stay focused on your career because you chose to do this, like delve into that and have a bit more discernment about the people that I have around myself. Because when you're making a lot of money and you're going around, everyone wants to be your friend, but
Yeah,
they're
for
not
sure.
necessarily. So those are two things for sure I would like drill into younger me's head. Like stay career focused and like keep that discernment on because not everyone has the best interest for you. Some people are just around you because you're doing well.
Most definitely, man. Adriana Maya, I really appreciate that we got to connect again. And, like
Oh,
I'm so proud of like all you accomplished. I saw like after like, I interviewed you, you started the Spliff and Giggles. And like, that's so
yes.
awesome. Like, I watch it like, from time to time and like, impressed. And I feel like you don't get enough credit for the non-porn interviews you do. Like you have like, some really dope creators, like, people who like I'm fans of like on the internet and like, salute to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I feel like Spliffs has been a really good outlet for me to not be so porny all the time. So it's been really fun. So I'm glad you enjoy.
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's a vibe. And like I see like, like you're gonna be up possibly for an Urban X Award, you know. So yeah, yeah. So tell people like, watching this interview, vote for you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Well,
taking the
thank
time.
you so
I really appreciate you.